You think feeling nothing makes someone strong, but it's usually the opposite. Emotional silence isn't a shield, it's a graveyard. People who feel nothing learned early that emotions only created consequences, punishment, shame, or betrayal. So they rewired themselves to avoid pain entirely. It's not resilience, it's collapse disguised as control. Emotional numbness doesn't appear out of nowhere. It's trained. Repeated pain forces the mind to turn down the volume until nothing registers. Like soldiers in World War II who stopped reacting after constant bombardment, the numb person adapts by removing their emotional response entirely. Not because they're cold, because the alternative was unbearable. Psychology calls this emotional blunting, but it feels more like switching off the lights in a burning building. When emotions overwhelm, the brain cuts the power to survive. People think numbness means apathy, but it's actually self-preservation. Their mind protects them by refusing to let them feel what might destroy them. Someone who feels nothing becomes an expert at imitation. They watch how others react and mirror it just enough to appear normal. Smiles, nods, polite laughter, all rehearsed. It's not deception, it's camouflage. Historical spies did the same to avoid detection. Emotional performance becomes a survival tactic. Their brain's reward system functions differently. Pleasure feels muted, pain feels distant, and relationships rarely spark. They don't get the emotional reward chemicals that others rely on. Like ancient soldiers numbed by battlefield trauma, they adapt by expecting nothing, wanting nothing, and feeling nothing. It's predictable, not mysterious. They can attach to people just without the emotional glue. It's practical attachment, not emotional closeness. They stay because it makes sense, not because it feels good. In history, kings and emperors formed alliances the same way, strategic, not sentimental. Don't mistake numbness for disinterest. It's just emotionless logic. Their emotional reactions are slow or absent, not because they don't understand, but because their brain doesn't signal urgency. Others panic, they freeze. Others cry, they go silent. This makes them seem robotic, but truthfully, silence is their default safety mode. Noise is dangerous, numbness is safe. Numb people detach in tiny moments, conversations, arguments, celebrations. It's not a choice, it's a reflex. Just as pilots detach emotionally during emergencies to make clean decisions, numb individuals disconnect to avoid internal chaos. To them, feeling nothing is better than feeling wrong. Emotional numbness is a kind of internal violence, the mind turning inward and cutting off its own nerves. It's brutal, but necessary. Many historical leaders survived trauma this way, shutting down the parts of themselves that felt too much. Numbness is not peace. It's the aftermath of psychological war. People who feel nothing don't get emotional warnings. No fear before danger, no guilt before mistakes, no joy after success. Their alarm system is broken. This makes them appear calm, even powerful, but it's actually a neurological silence that hides enormous unresolved damage. You've probably noticed how they respond late, not confused, just delayed. Their emotions arrive like mail sent through a broken postal system. Psychology calls this delayed affect, but it feels more like buffering. Ancient trauma survivors describe this same lag, emotions processed only after danger passed. To the numb person, reacting fast feels unsafe. People think numb individuals are lazy or indifferent, but the truth is sharper. When nothing feels good, motivation collapses. Why move when the reward feels identical to doing nothing? Medieval monks who practiced emotional fasting reported the same flatness, a life stripped of highs and lows until everything feels equal. Their thinking becomes mathematical. Every decision is cost-benefit with zero emotional bias. That's why numb people seem logical. Emotions aren't pulling the strings. Generals in wartime often shifted into this mode, hyper-rational, ice-cold, detached. It's not genius. It's emotional shutdown, disguised as clarity. When you can't feel anything, you learn to rely only on yourself, not out of pride, out of necessity. Numb people avoid depending on others because emotional dependency once cost them everything. History repeats it. Orphans, soldiers, abandoned children all grow up believing closeness equals danger. This part you won't expect. Numb people are often the most sensitive. The numbness appears because they once felt too deeply. The mind shut down the emotional system like a breaker tripping under overload. Ancient philosophers wrote about this. The heart becomes stone only after burning. Conflict should trigger emotion. For numb individuals, it triggers escape, not fear, emptiness. Their brain learned long ago that fighting back didn't change anything. Many abused children display this exact pattern: disengage, detach, shut down. Silence becomes their armor. They remember events, but not the feelings tied to them. It's like watching their own life as a documentary instead of living it. Trauma survivors often describe this emotional detachment, a way the brain protects itself by unlinking memory from pain. Anger for them isn't loud, it's silent, cold, and surgical. Their rage doesn't explode, it disconnects. Historically, some of the harshest rulers operated from this emotional void, punishing not out of passion, but numb calculation. This is why numb anger scares people. It's emotionless. Numb people aren't indifferent, they're starving. They chase intensity, danger, or chaos because normal emotions don't register. Gladiators, soldiers, and thrill-seekers throughout history sought extreme experiences just to feel alive again. Modern numb individuals do the same, just quietly. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You rarely notice numb people because they exist outside emotional frequency. They don't disrupt, don't demand, don't flare. They blend, but they're everywhere. Classmates, coworkers, partners. And every one of them carries a mind running on silent mode. There's always a threshold, a quiet point where the numb person realizes the void isn't protecting them anymore. It's consuming them. They start noticing how disconnected they've become, not because they want to feel again, but because the absence itself begins to hurt. Their thoughts get darker, their judgment foggier, and the silence becomes hostile. This moment is where collapse disguises itself as calm. Emotionless people aren't hollow, they're overloaded. Beneath the surface is a pressure cooker of anger, disappointment, and unmet needs they've refused to acknowledge. Numbness is the lid, screwed on tight to prevent an explosion. But suppression distorts everything. Irritability creeps in, impulsive decisions happen, and small triggers feel enormous. The rage isn't obvious, but it's there, shaping their reactions quietly. When feelings dull, moral boundaries soften, not because they're suddenly cruel, but because emotional feedback, guilt, empathy, hesitation, stops guiding them. They become capable of choices they'd never consider before. Not monstrous choices, but detached ones, cutting people off overnight, abandoning commitments, or choosing convenience over conscience. Numbness doesn't erase morality, but it erodes the brakes. They tell themselves they're stable because nothing shakes them, but stability built on emotional frostbite is fragile. They cling to routines, predictable people, predictable environments, anything that doesn't demand a reaction. This creates the illusion of strength while hiding the truth. They're not controlling their emotions have shut down to control them. Numb people often struggle to recognize who they used to be. Their memories feel distant, like scenes from someone else's life. Photos don't spark emotion, songs don't pull nostalgia, and old relationships feel like abstract concepts. This temporal disconnection makes them feel unanchored, drifting between who they were and who they pretend to be now. The void becomes familiar, and familiarity feels safe. Some start depending on numbness the same way others depend on denial or distraction. It becomes their emotional anesthesia. But anesthetics don't heal. They prevent pain long enough for the wound to worsen. The comfort becomes a trap, a subtle addiction to nothingness. People who feel nothing unintentionally destroy connections because emotional reciprocity becomes impossible. They forget to reassure. They fail to respond. They misinterpret affection as pressure. Others see coldness. They see, I'm trying. But numbness is contagious. It spreads to people who care about them, leaving both sides confused, tired, and quietly breaking. If they ever stop and ask themselves why they feel nothing, the whole emotional dam risks breaking. So they don't. They keep moving, keep shutting off discomfort, keep pretending they're fine. But the mind can only ignore itself for so long. Eventually, the silence grows loud enough that even numbness can't drown it out. That's when reality forces its reckoning. Here's the twist. Most numb people aren't afraid of feeling nothing. They're afraid of what will happen the moment they start feeling again. They fear grief they never processed, anger they buried, love they lost, and truths they avoided. The numbness isn't a shield, it's a countdown, and the fear is what keeps them frozen. Eventually, numbness cracks. The question is, what comes out first, the pain or the truth? When emotion finally returns, it never arrives gently, it floods, and that moment exposes everything they hid. If you want to understand why your own numbness might be building, or why someone close to you feels emotionally unreachable, subscribe and stay. The next video might explain what you've been avoiding.